Welcome to this Nexa video, where we will introduce the Nexa form editor. This video is aimed at the Nexa administrators who have the permissions to create and modify forms for the end users. All Nexa items have associated metadata, which are stored in the database. In turn, the database is organized by tables, and each time you create a new class in Nexa, you also want to create a new database table that will contain the values of the attributes of the items of that class. The whole database is then a rich collection of interconnected tables that represent the data of your company. And this brings us to the concept of forms. A form is an interface that you use to interact with the database from Nexa, either to view information stored in the database or to modify or add information to the database. When you want to add or modify an item in Nexa, you will use a form. For example, I select the company's customer class, and I check out one of its items to modify it. The associated form pops up and allows me to modify the metadata of the item. Nexa forms are completely customizable. You can select which attributes should be shown, their position, their names, the type of information they hold, and so on. These operations are performed via the form editor. There is a strong connection between classes and forms. Each item in Nexa must belong to a class, like company's customers in the previous example. A class is then the representation model of a particular kind of item. In turn, each class is associated to a form, which in turn is associated to a table of the database where the rows represent the single items of that class, and the columns are all the attributes of these items. In order to create, modify, or delete the forms, one needs to log into Nexa as an administrator. I select the Administration tab and I click on Forms. The form editor comprises of two panes. At the center there is the form hierarchy. The right-hand side pane can display different information depending on the selected tab: Details, Layout, and Fields. Let's start with the form hierarchy. At its top there is a search bar where one can input a term related to a specific form. Only those forms that match the search criteria are shown in the form hierarchy. For example, I search the email form and here it appears in the hierarchy. One can also navigate all the forms by clicking on the hierarchy and expanding and collapsing the desired form names. When I select a given form in the form hierarchy, its layout is displayed on the right-hand side pane under the Layout tab. As you can see, in this example the company info form is a child of the demo attributes form. The former is called the derived form, while the latter is called a master form. One master form can have as many derived forms as you wish. All the forms have fields. In the following, we will use two similar terms, fields and attributes. A form is a collection of fields that allow the end user to view or modify the values of the attributes of the items in Nexa. I can select a field by clicking on it in the Layout pane. If I want to see a list of all the available fields of the form and their properties, I need to click on the Fields tab. When I double-click on one of these fields, the Edit Field Property window opens and summarizes how it is displayed in the form. As we introduced earlier, there are two kinds of forms, master forms and derived forms. A master form defines the structure of a database table. Every time you create a master form, a new database table is created. If you add a field to the master form, a new column is added to the database table. What is a derived form then? Notice that the demo attributes master form contains a large number of fields. Only a subset of these attributes might be required to completely describe a company. For this reason, the derived form called company info has been built and uses only a subset of all the fields defined in the master form. As a comparison, another derived form of the same master form, namely manufacturer info, has another subset of fields. Some of them are common to the company info form, while others are different. The advantage of creating a single table via master form is that each attribute is defined once, and it is used by many different classes via the associated derived forms. What if I want to incorporate one of those fields of the master form that are not visible in the present derived form? I check the Show Suppressed Fields box, and now also the suppressed fields become visible. I right-click on the desired ones and select Unsuppress. I check in the layout and I can see that the fields city and address are now visible. To suppress them again, right-click and select Suppress. I click on Save to confirm the changes. Nevertheless, some fields cannot be suppressed. They are called the required attributes: name, title, preparer, prepared on, and class. This is a subset of the common attributes, that is, attributes that are automatically associated to a class by Nexa. All the forms of the hierarchy come with a small icon. Each icon contains a letter that provides hints regarding the form itself. M is used for master forms, D is used for derived forms, S is used for system forms. Let's have a detailed look at the Edit Field Properties window. I search for Cut Tools Master in the form hierarchy. A preview of the form is shown in the form layout on the right-hand side of the window. When you select a field, a bounding box surrounding it appears. We call this box the control. The control determines the area of the form associated to a field. In the case of the Cut Tools Master form, there are just 3 fields. When I double-click on any of them, the Edit Field Properties window opens. The size of a control is determined by the control width and control height values. These quantities are expressed in pixels. I can, for example, increase the control width to 300 pixels and the control height to 40 pixels. I click on OK and I can see that the field associated to quantity is now wider and taller. Please remember that these changes are not yet saved, and leaving the current window would cancel all the changes, so I click on Stay. You can always save by clicking here. The position of the control is given by the X position and Y position values. If one inserts X equal 1, the control is moved at the very left of the form, while Y equal 1 places the control at the very top of the form. Also in this case the values are expressed in pixels. The minimum allowed value for this field is 1. For example, I move the Cut Tools attribute to the right by 510 pixels and downward by 80 pixels. Each field contains a single attribute, but it is divided into 2 parts, one providing a description of the attribute for the user, called the prompt, on the left, and the part where the user can input or modify the value of the attribute on the right. The prompt is the label of the attribute from the point of view of the front-end user. You can modify the space of the control dedicated to the prompt by changing the value of the prompt width here. For example, I change the prompt width to 200 pixels. While the prompt is the label that the end user sees in the front end for the selected attribute, name is the database column in the database table. As you can see, the field associated to the prompt uses black fonts, while in the case of name, the color is gray. This is because once the attribute has been created and saved, you can later modify the prompt, but not the name. For example, I can change the prompt from quantity to quantity of material. The name of the attribute in the database, on the other hand, is determined at the field creation. That is, once I click Save on the master form, I can no longer modify it. Also, the type and store length have a gray color for the same reason. They are quantities that cannot be changed with the form editor after their creation. If one does not tick the Require box, a user won't need to enter a specific value for this attribute when using this form. Otherwise, if the Require box has been selected, every time that the form is used, a value must be inserted before saving the form. Sometimes the users are allowed to see the value of an attribute, but they are not supposed to modify it. If this is the case, we can leave the Editable box unchecked. If I want to provide a default value for a field, I can set it here. This quantity is going to be shown in the layout in gray. For example, I set the default value of the attribute to 3. Now this value appears in gray in the layout. Finally, let's explore the Layout pane a bit more. The layout provides a preview of the form according to the "what you see is what you get" approach. This means that the users will see exactly the same form as the one appearing here. One can select a field at a time by clicking on it. Once a field is selected, it is possible to change the size of the control by clicking on its border and stretching its sides, like any window in Windows. We can also move it around by clicking and dragging it. At the top of the Layout pane, there is a series of buttons. The first one opens a list of all the possible new attribute types to be inserted in a master form. For example, when I drag the text entry into the layout, this adds a new field referring to an attribute of the text type in that position. Notice that we can add new attributes types only to master forms, since the attributes of a derived form are limited to be a subset of those of its master. The other buttons are used for aligning the different fields in the form. When you click on one of them, a warning message appears at the bottom right of the screen. The reason is simply that you can align two or more fields only after they have been selected. To do so, I first click on a field, I Ctrl-click on a second field, and so on. I can reiterate this process for all of the fields of the form that I want to align to each other. Notice that the box of the last selected field is highlighted in blue, since it is the leading box. For example, if we align left, all the selected boxes will get the same X position of the blue box. I can align them to the left, to the right, to the top, to the bottom, etc. Notice that the alignment follows the endpoints of the prompts, not of the control. In this video we gave you an overview of the capabilities of the form editor, and we provided a basic idea regarding the relation between the forms and the database tables. You are now able to search for forms in your Nexa instance. You can modify the appearance of a form at your choice by creating and modify the form fields you need. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notifications so that you don't miss all the upcoming Nexa videos with new tutorials and feature updates. Thanks for watching.